Go get Guthrie's. It's always good. And I'm Soren She's meteorologist at your core.
Radio 92.7.
Sam Jordan, News Talk 92.7 Action Sports Now. Chattanooga Mocs volleyball team allowed a weekend high 44 kills and a .386 attacking percentage during their weekend loss to SEC member Tennessee on the final day of the Tennessee Classic inside Thompson Bowling Arena. UTC drops to 1-2 on the season. Tennessee improves to 3-0 and capturing the 2018 Tennessee Classic Tournament crown. UTC will host their annual Chattanooga Classic Tournament this coming weekend, August 31st and September 1st inside McClellan Gym. University of Tennessee Chattanooga sophomore place kicker Victor Elmo has been named to the Fred Mitchell Award watch list. The Outstanding Place Kicker Award is provided to the nation's top collegiate place kicker among more than 750 FCS Division II, Division III, NAIA, and NJCAA football teams. He was a member of the Southern Conference All-Freshman team last season after hitting 9 out of 12 field goals and was 22 of 23 on PATs. Sam Jordan, News Talk 92.7 Action Sports Now.
Nuga Radio.
Are you brain dead? Still voting for pathetic liberals? Take 3 hours of Sean Hannity from 3 to 6.
Nuga Radio.
Then call us in the morning between 9 and 11.
92.7.
Nuga Radio.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, beautiful people in the city of Chattanooga. How are you guys doing this morning? I hope you're doing well. It's Marie Mott with Marie Mott Show, and y'all know what it is. I'm taking it from the streets, from City Hall to the mayor's office. I can't leave out the police department. From the valley low to the mountaintop, giving you guys a bird's eye view to what's going on in the city of Chattanooga. Good morning, wake up, good people, because we got a lot to talk about today. And oh my goodness, today, yes, we're going to be talking about the Chattanooga Police Department yet again. Oh my God, we just can't stop talking about the police, but it ain't my fault. I report, you decide. I am just reporting what you should know, what you may not know if you don't pick up the paper, because a lot of you, I know my listener has a lot to do. My listener has a job or a business. My listener has children or grandchildren or just things to do. And maybe the only time that you have to see what's going on in the city of Chattanooga is just listening in on the Marie Mott Show. And I certainly appreciate you listening and tuning in. And don't forget to share. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, don't forget to share the video. Call in is always the same, 800-8949, or you can drop a comment. Interact with me. This is a conversation that I'm having with you personally. Okay? So let's get into it. Today's show. Man. So I couldn't go to bed last night without having two stories. And the interesting thing is that it's not only involving our law enforcement, from the sheriff's office to the Chattanooga Police Department, but it also involves one particular judge who is the common foundation of favoritism in local DUI cases that we have had here in the city of Chattanooga that involve law enforcement officers. Now, I understand that some of us go through personal things, emotional things, stressful things. We're stressed, we're pressed, right? We're living in some interesting times, right? And for some of us, the way that we have to escape out of our problems or what we're going through is through a bottle. I'm not saying it's right, but I'm saying as a child of a father who struggled with alcoholism and a grandfather who struggled with alcoholism, I know that the alcoholism is just the byproduct of something going on internally. Whether it's suppressed emotions or feelings, especially when we talk about men, because we do not have space in our society that gives men the ability to express and go through their pain. In particular, men are groomed and socialized that if you cry, you're a wimp, that if you admit that you are struggling or show any signs of weakness, that you are a chump. And so there is no space for men to be able to let go of their pain and the things that they go through as men, among other men. and find that support system. I understand that. I firmly do. Yet, there's a but. There's a but, and it's huge. But when you decide that you want to wake up one day and be a police officer, and that you one day want to be a law enforcement officer, and that you want to effectively put on a uniform that separates you from the civilian, then there is an expectation that I have for you above the citizen. And that is that if the citizen doesn't do it, that you got to. And the interesting thing, interestingly enough, we found in a lot of instances where police officers have taken it into their own hands to become judge, jury, and executioner. That they are the final say of what happens to the civilian. And the interesting thing is that how is it that the people, your neighbor, your friend, you yourself gets held to a higher standard than those responsible for leading you? It's like going to your job, and I know some of us out there have experienced that. I'm sure you individually have, probably. You've gone to work, and you're doing the best you can. You're giving 100%, and somebody out there who's responsible for leading you is not doing the same. But somehow they'll write you up, reprimand you for supposedly not doing what you're supposed to do. Now, it says a lot that our police officers continue to have cases that come forward with either it's domestic violence or drinking. And what that says to me is that being a police officer is not this great thing. And maybe we need to start asking ourselves questions that being a police officer, especially sometimes even for these good officers, because they know that they see things going wrong within the department. They see things going on, corruption, double standards, little diversity, politics. They see it going on within their own department. The way through it is to drink or maybe go home and beat their wife. We have a problem. And the problem is that I don't have anything against police. And I think people continue to take my criticisms such as, it's not that I have a problem with police. I have a problem with the reality that it is our police department that continues to get slapped on the wrist when we have good people like Keila Jackson and Cameron Williams who will lose their driver's license and have to pay thousands of dollars in fines. And one police officer, Michael Trumbo, who had a crash because of his drinking on Martin Luther King Boulevard last year, gets to basically resign from his job as a trade-off with Judge Steelman to get his DUI charges dismissed. Now, how is it that people can't get a driver's license? My neighbor, my friends, the people I love, my fellow Chattanooggans, because they are poor, or maybe just because it's just too expensive. They can't get their driver's license because of fines. And then we have police officers who can get caught drinking and driving. And all they have to do is make a trade-off with a judge and they get dismissed. But it's as if that wasn't already bad, that the police officer has no consequences for his actions with the exception of resigning as a trade-off, I believe. My opinion is that he traded with the judge. But then we have another instance of a story that I know Nooga Radio covered very extensively, was the crash back in July on Highway 111, where we have Justin Whaley, who was so drunk that he drove down the wrong side of the highway. Now that's, if that ain't drunk, I don't know what is. So drunk, he drives down the wrong side of the highway for miles. And on a typical day, James Brumlow an engineer, a husband, a father of 4, got up like every other day. I'm sure he probably had breakfast and with his children, helped them get ready or get dressed. I'm sure he woke up that morning and he kissed his wife and told her that he loved her or hugged her, and probably left the house ready for work, thinking today was going to be a good day. And as soon as he got home, he was going to get to spend time with his beautiful wife and his 4 children. And on his way to work, Mr. Justin Whaley, who is drunk to such a point that he's driving on the wrong side of the highway, folks, not the street, the highway, hits him head on and kills him. Now, 800-8949 if you want to call in and talk to me. As if that's not so bad. I've read the article that included James's wife. They were talking to his wife, Mrs. Brumlow. And as I read it, the tears streamed down my face because, you know, you never take into account that the person you married and you said I do to and that you promised you were going to spend the rest of your days with will walk out of the door and be killed by a drunk driver. You never take into account things like that. You never expect for it to happen. For some of us, we believe that something like that can never happen. And I'm sure Ms. Brumlow and her husband had plans to see their children graduate from school, plans to walk their children down the aisle. I'm sure Mr. Brumlow was going to walk, if he had daughters, walk them down the aisle, be there for his first grandchild. And all of that got stripped away, not because of Mr. Brumlow's choices, but because of the choices and the actions of another. He lost his life. And his family is never the same. Never will be the same. No matter what happens to Justin Whaley, Mr. Brumlow's family will never be compensated. There's nothing that the family can be given that will replace the life of a husband and a father. There is nothing. I'm sure Miss Brumlow would give anything to have him back. The children would give anything to have him back. But what we see is that in Chattanooga, if you know the right people, the justice system doesn't apply to you. And certainly if you wear a badge, it surely doesn't apply to you. And my criticisms, I continue to state for the people who are deaf intentionally and the people who won't hear me because they have made up in their mind that our police can do no wrong. And the people who get caught up in these instances often deserved it. It's not the truth. I'm sure no one asks to be pulled over and have their car illegally searched because they fell asleep at the wheel and then go to jail and be accused of DUI, even though they didn't have a breathalyzer, Malik Sanford. I'm sure that people who are just making a run to the gas station never intended to be dragged out of their vehicles by their extremities. Diana Watt. I'm absolutely sure that people never intend to watch their daughter be dragged out of their vehicle that is illegally being taken. The daughter being dragged out of the vehicle by her extremities. A.V. Gray's daughter. I'm sure. We never think that these things could happen, but I'm sure the women who got pulled over by the police officer who would later rape them, I'm sure they never thought that being pulled over would end in them being sexually molested. But the problem that I continue to see is that if these are just the instances, and we got to be honest, We have to be honest about what we see, about what we know, about what is coming out. And then we have to be intentional as community about not only speaking out about these instances, but holding people in charge responsible and putting pressure on them to do what is right. Now, if you went out and was caught drinking and driving, would there be mercy for you? Would you probably get the charges dismissed if you just told the judge you were going to quit your job? Or would you have to pay thousands of dollars for representation, spend time in jail, and sweat and wonder if you're going to walk away with a dismissal? Interestingly enough, Justin Whaley had a very swift, as a matter of fact, the Soddy Daisy police chief, as well as even District Attorney Neil Pinkston, were perplexed at how quickly this man had a hearing to reduce his bail. And the same judge, Judge Stillman, who allowed Mr. Michael Trumbo to walk away from a DUI as a police officer, a former CPD officer, walk away without any repercussions, without any sort of responsibility. He grants leniency to Justin Whaley while sitting in the same courtroom, staring, I'm sure, looking at the wife of the deceased, the family of the deceased, and decide to give this man a $50,000 bail when originally it was set at $600,000. Because he wasn't just caught drinking, folks. His actions resulted in the death of another person who was just doing what they did every day, go to work. How is it that we have more compassion for the irresponsible than we do have for the people who do what is right? Because the justice system in Chattanooga is not fair. Shucks. Somebody should look into this, because Judge Stillman's own son back in 2015, if we would remember, got caught spitting past the courthouse. Now, it's interesting that, now, again, I'm not a genius, but I'm pretty darn bright. The story said that he had been drinking beers, but he had 2 open containers of Jack Daniels, which is whiskey. Totally different from beer for anybody who drinks. His own son has been involved in DUI that could have killed somebody. You see, these are the things that judges are supposed to think about. That yes, even if you have problems or you're going through things, that when you drink and then you decide to get behind the wheel, and then for people like his son who are obviously drinking and driving because of open containers in the vehicle, or at least one would believe that the probability of them killing somebody shoots through the roof. But the justice system here in the city of Chattanooga, as well as our law enforcement, have zero standards of accountability and zero standards of ever doing what is right. And to me, that is a huge problem as we continue to wait for post-conviction relief for Angela Moore, where we see a similar instance of police corruption, as well as Judge Poole providing him a lawyer that did not even have the experience to try the case. This screams of why we need, first, community oversight into the police, and second, why we really need to start taking a hard look at those who's supposed to judge within our judicial system. Because I'm beginning to see a pattern amongst the two where people can do whatever they please. And as long as one hand washes the other, nobody ever is held accountable. But then I see people like Constance Giles, who called the police for help, as having to go back and forth through court and talking to the police on trying to just ensure that she does not get any felonies from being arrested when she originally called for help. Dear listener, I submit to you that as long as you will not see what is right and plainly in front of you, these problems are not only going to continue, but they're going to get worse. The reality is we only know what we know. And we should be concerned about what we don't know. We were promised that the police department would be better under the new police chief, and that has not happened. We were promised that from the mayor, as well as the buy-in of the city council. They are responsible for this. Their hands aren't clean. And the burden is now on us, you, to let your voice be heard on these issues. Do not remain silent. You cannot escape what is happening here in the city of Chattanooga. It will affect each and every one of us. It's Marie Mott with the Marie Mott Show. It's tough, but stay tuned for the second half of the segment, because we're going to continue to talk about what's going on here in the city of Chattanooga. Stay tuned.
Chattanooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4. 92.7 FM's news now.
For the first time ever, Tennessee reached a tourism milestone. Visitors to Tennessee spent over $20 billion last year. Governor Haslam announced the record numbers, saying as part of the record-breaking year, nearly $2 billion in local and state sales tax were collected, something Tennessee relies heavily on since there's no state income tax. Found safe, the 4 children that were kidnapped in Lima, Ohio, had all eyes on communities along I-75, possibly headed to Florida, including Chattanooga. Police have arrested their non-custodial mother and her boyfriend. They hadn't traveled very far as they were found in Ohio. And there's a new recall involving Volkswagen. According to the NTSB, Volkswagen recalling 8,416 Atlas SUVs and Passat sedans because the brake caliper bracket mounting bolts may have not been tightened sufficiently. The recall on the Chattanooga-made vehicles expected to begin October 14th. Val St. John for Nooga Radio News Talk 92.7 Action News now.
Let's face it, Old Faithful isn't as faithful as it used to be. Constant repairs are a hassle and can rack up quick in money and time. Landers McClarty Ford can fix that. Right now, you can get a 2016 Ford Focus, 34,000 miles, only $11,491. A 2017 Chevy Spark with only 17,000 miles for less than $12,000. A 2015 Volkswagen Jetta with less than 21,000 miles for $11,991. Yeah, browse their entire inventory of new and new-to-you cars, trucks, and SUVs online at Landers McClarty Ford of FortPayne.com. Landers McClarty Ford of Fort Payne. If you can't find your next perfect ride, they'll go find it for you. Big city selection, small town prices, friendly service, and top dollar for your trade. The savings are waiting and only a short drive away, so what are you waiting for? Get started with your personalized shopping today at Landers McClarty Ford of FortPayne.com.
Nooga Radio.
Roar into Talladega.
Hello? Who am I speaking with?
Eric.
You're our winner.
Really?
You'll receive tickets for all 3 races between the Camping World Truck Series, Xfinity Series, and the Monster Energy Cup races.
Holy cow.
In addition, you'll receive a 2-night stay at the Microtel Hotel and restaurant accommodations at 2 area restaurants.
Nooga Radio.
Roar into Talladega.
Nooga Radio.
92.7.
Your NASCAR racing station. Nooga Radio 92.7 FM.
Nooga Radio 92.7.
I got my business up and running, and it's already expanding. I got lucky. Lucky because I found Signal Voice and Data. Signal Voice and Data can incorporate all of my business information sharing and communications seamlessly, keep my costs down, and let me work more productively with endless connectivity no matter where I might be. That's called working smart, not hard. Go to signalvoicetn.com and bring the future of communication to your business today. signalvoicetn.com.
Your home is a constant work in progress. Repaint the walls? Yeah, easy enough. Leaky faucet? There's a video for that. But roof repair? You might want some help. That's where Chattanooga roofing contractors come in. They have 3 generations of roofing excellence you can count on. Leave the ladder in the garage. Go to chatroofing.com. That's chatroofing.com for Chattanooga Roofing Contractors, a roofing company you can trust.
Hey, Karen, you need me for that 1 o'clock?
Yes, Cheese, please. Karen, did you get the quarterlies done? Yep, they're filed in the cabinet.
Karen, can you describe the initiatives to the new hire? Thanks.
Oh, sure. Full-bodied, some floral notes, maybe a hint of dark chocolate.
Am I in the right department?
Got wine on the mind? Come unwind at Virgola. Italian wine, oysters, caviar, cheeses, and more. Perfect after work or a romantic date night. Virgola Italian Wine Bar, 608 Georgia Avenue.
Man, you sure you know what you're doing?
Yeah, I worked with my dad on his truck all the time. Just one more bolt to go.
Yeah, wrong bolt. Today's truck ain't your daddy's truck. For repairs on today's vehicles, you need AMCO Transmission and Total Car Care of Chattanooga on Lee Highway. Stay on the road, not in the garage. AMCO Transmission on Lee Highway. Get it done the right way. The Thompson Pet way. Yeah, I just put that anywhere.
Now, Rick wants you to buy on U.S. Gold American coins. Are you tired of making 1% on your investments with the banks? Even 2 or 3% at best? Now, Rick wants you to buy on U.S. Gold American coins.
Rick Davis Gold and Diamonds, Brainerd Road. Chattanooga weather.
We expect partly cloudy, hot, and humid weather out there for your afternoon. A few isolated showers and storms, though, will pop up. Highs upper 80s to near 90 tonight. A lingering shower or storm possible through midnight. Lows 70 to 72 with scattered showers and storms a little more likely for Thursday and Friday. For lunch or dinner, come to Guthrie's, home of the original golden fried delicious chicken finger with their special world famous sauce. Open daily locations in Trenton, Signal Mountain, and Ringgold. Go get Guthrie's. It's always good. And I'm Source E12, Chief Meteorologist Patrick Ford.
The Radio 92.7.
Oh, what's going on? What's going on, good people in the city of Chattanooga? It's Marie Mott with the Marie Mott Show, and I know I have some tough conversations here on the show. I know it, but we got to talk about what's going on. There's a whole lot going on, and I keep asking the question. I ask the questions that I know some of you guys ask in private. Where is the mayor? Where's the mayor at? Why do we keep having all of these issues and these problems going on and we don't hear from our city leaders? Where are they? And I ended the first half of the segment talking about 2 instances where law enforcement have been able to effectively get leniency, former law enforcement, let me say former, leniency or just dismissals because of their ties to the police department or the sheriff's office from the same judge, which is Judge Stillman, in the form of DUI cases. And folks, we all should know and be able to strongly admit that we can end up in handcuffs in little to no time as just average civilians, if even it looks like we're getting an attitude with a police officer. And they can charge us with whatever they want. How is it that people who wear badges and have uniforms do not get held to a higher standard than the people? And why is it, especially when we do not get what we were promised as the people? Don't forget, it was your mayor, Andy Burke, and all of your city council persons who voted for us to get a police chief and promised us that we would get reform under this new police chief. And that has not happened. If anything, we've got more concentrated problems that have happened in a shorter period of time. Now it would be different if these things came out and we started seeing people getting reprimanded. That would be something different, because that would be some reform. That would be the office getting cleaned up. But we don't see that. We see things coming out and officers swiftly and quickly exonerated without any disciplinary actions or losing their job. Or if they do lose their job, it's just so they can use their get out of jail free card. That's a problem. Folks, interestingly enough, the next topic that we're going to talk about is we just had a federal bill to increase surveillance, lighting, and fencing in predominantly African-American neighborhoods that are impoverished. So the Chattanooga Housing Authority just received $250,000 in order to increase, and I put this in quotations, increase security. Now, if you did not know, the term ghetto is a term that came from World War II Nazi Germany. If you look at, and I've talked about it on the show before, but if you look at the housing that they had for the Jews, housing, when I say housing, it was concentration camps. So let me be frank and let me be clear. When you look at concentration camps of World War II Germany, and I encourage you to do that, look at them, pictures, Auschwitz, Dachau, Birkenau. Look at them. American ghettos are a complete remodel, similar in design and purpose. It is to concentrate those that you want to control, those that you don't want to go into certain areas, those that you want to watch. And interestingly enough, when you look at those that have not been bombed or torn down, you see where there are watchtowers. And originally, a lot of them had fencing to ensure that people that were in concentration camps could not escape. So the intention of a ghetto in the first place is not for affordable housing. It is to concentrate poor people into an area so you can surveil them, police them, and watch them. If you want to talk with me about that, y'all know to call in 800-8949 or drop a comment. But one of my favorite books is 1984 by George Orwell. That man was a visionary and completely had an idea of where we were headed in this society a long time ago. George Orwell said that if you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot print or a boot stamp on the face, and that is the future. Big Brother is watching you. Big Brother is watching us all. But the thing that I want people to think about is in the areas that these are going to affect, because y'all know what I do. I'm informing you guys on what's going on in the city of Chattanooga. The areas that this is going to affect is College Hill Courts, Mary Walker Towers, Emma Wheeler Towers, Cromwell Hills, Gateway Towers, Greenwood, Fairmont, and Dogwood Apartments. These are all areas of poor people of color, predominantly. Stop and think about that for a moment. And I don't understand $250,000 to surveil people being in their best, in their benefit. We're already being watched. It's called having a cell phone. We're already being surveilled. We know that already. Why do we see? I asked the question because I want you, the listener, to think about this. And why do I want you, the listener, to have a problem? Because even if you don't live in the poor area, or even if you don't live in the areas that are predominantly of color, let me continue to state this to you and make my case that what is good for the goose is always good for the gander. What is good for the few is soon good for you too. We have to see what's going on. And then we have to ask the bigger question, well, if they're doing this here, what is the purpose of it happening here? Is this happening for the benefit of the people? Or maybe is this to increase the amount of people who are going to go to jail from poor and impoverished areas? And the question that people who may not have these problems need to ask is, well, who benefits from this? And when they're done locking up all the poor people that they could possibly lock up, who will they come for next? So the interesting thing about Chattanooga, well, it's not interesting. It's really the pitiful thing about Chattanooga that I've noticed about the place that I love, that I was born and raised in, the place that has, that I've buried my grandmothers in, my grandfathers in, is that change in a better way is the last thing that seems to be able to come to Chattanooga. Investment into the people is something that doesn't really happen. We saw where the city of Chattanooga got out of the school business, and it's been going downhill ever since. But then I look at, like today, the salaries of the top officials and principals and people who are often responsible for pushing miseducated children out of their doors. A lot of them are clearing close to or six figures. We're paying people to send our children to prison. We're paying them well. And I know some people are going to hear this. And I know for you, the listener, who's all about Hamilton County Department of Education and the public school system, I know it's tough. But we covered a case last week where the Hamilton County Department of Education, even though it's supposedly all about now inclusion and diversity, it still didn't stop them from paying lawyers on retainer to fight against Luca and his parents because he was discriminated against because he has Down syndrome. It didn't keep them from spending plenty of money for fighting that family for 5 years. We have the city of Chattanooga, not too long ago, propose a panhandling ordinance that would keep poor people in need from asking for money, because we sure as heck wouldn't want any tourists to ever be scared about going about downtown and somebody asking them for money. But it's perfectly okay for Mayor Burke's uncle to continue to open his doors in the form of his nightclub, Coyote Jack, and have people continuously either A, get murdered outside, or B, get shot outside of its doors. Do we see how this works? You see, there's a reason why I cover constitutional rights. I was talking to David Toulis about this yesterday after I got off the air, that I didn't even know. And so I know that, and I'm going to start digging into this, and this may be just a glimpse of what you have to look forward to this upcoming Friday or either next week, because I haven't decided what we're going to cover. I'm split between two topics for this Friday of Know Your Rights Friday. And that's every Friday. Tune in, folks, because I'm giving it to you. We cover constitutional law, things you need to know, how to assert your rights, how to protect yourself and your family and your community by knowledge and not with fear. That it is forbidden for states and for municipal governments to participate in personal business. So when the mayor wants to do things like, that is forbidden in the Constitution. When the mayor wants to do things like have city council basically hand over three buildings, one including the Edney, hand over 3 buildings and label them as surplus buildings that can be sold. This is illegal. This is against the Constitution. And when I talked about yesterday, the difference between a democracy and a constitutional republic, Thomas Jefferson stated that a democracy is nothing more than a mob rule, where people basically run wild, unchecked, spin, do. And the only people who have the burden or the responsibility of paying for all of this is the people and the generations after. Because the thing that we have to think about is the decisions and the things and the choices that are being made in the form of government today are often not going to automatically affect a lot of us in our lifetime. But we're going to get old and decrepit, and we're going to see these choices and these decisions affect our children and our grandchildren. And if we live long enough, some of our great-grandchildren. You see, this is why it's important for you, the listener, to move beyond a place of being, if you are once like me, and I'm not going to shame you for it, a keyboard warrior. The most you could do is talk about how bad things are online, but your butt doesn't get out of the seat to get out into your community and do the hard work. You're not building a relationship. You're not offering anything. I need you to move. Because either traction works 2 ways. Either we're going to push forward, as tough as it is sometimes, as hard as it is sometimes. Either we're going to push forward in traction, or we're going to get pushed back in traction. But we're going to move either way it goes. So while you think you're sitting sedentary and you think that because you're not doing anything either way, nothing is happening, believe the needle is being moved. Either we're going to full or we're going to empty. But don't think that nothing is happening. Surveillance into the Black community or the communities that are impoverished or poor is not for safety. We need to stop lying to ourselves. And I'm all about changing language, how we think about things, because we need to start telling the truth. Surveillance into poor areas is for the assurance of locking people up. Nothing more, absolutely nothing less. I guarantee you, in these areas, we're going to see an increase in the amount of people, and I can almost bet you it's going to be young people, in particular young Black and Hispanic men who are going to get locked up either in our juvenile courts or our adult courts. Simple and plain. And what have we even began to ask ourselves, what does this do for people's mental state? What does this do for the children who live in these areas? How do they feel internally once seeing free open spaces now being contained by fence and lighting? And everywhere they look, there is a camera watching them. Good people, my listener, my friend, my neighbor, whoever you may be. It's a lot going on in the city of Chattanooga, and it's tough. It's tough for me sometimes to cover this stuff. Not because it's tough for me to talk about it, but I know because I've lived here all of my life, I know what I'm up against, and I'm honest about it. And then I've talked to people who are not from here, who moved to Chattanooga, especially people who move to Chattanooga and get involved in the community and are encouraged about trying to affect some level of change or progress. They get a lot of bureaucracy, red tape, pushback, and ignorance. And I'm solely dedicated on my show, number one, to informing you of what you do not know, but hopefully building an information highway and a relational highway from person to person, listener to listener, community member to community, because we're all in this boat together. We're all in it together. And if the boat is sinking, we can't fight over lifeboats. It's not enough lifeboats for everybody. And nobody deserves to go down with the ship. Because we didn't build this ship. America wasn't created yesterday. Chattanooga wasn't a city made yesterday. Some of us were born into this boat and some of us moved into this boat. But we're in it anyways. And so we have a choice. We have a choice. And the choice should not only be to get involved, but if you see the stories that I'm putting out, the information that I'm putting out, number one, pass it on. Because what I put out, I don't put out anything that people can't benefit from. Either benefit from knowing or benefit from being a part of. Because one of the things that I do see as well in the city of Chattanooga is that for the people who are doing good work, who are accomplishing a lot, they don't have the opportunity, or maybe they haven't had a way of going into communities that they haven't touched yet, or people that maybe have never seen them or heard of their work. And that's what my show is for. That's what my show is dedicated to. It's not just Riri getting on, that's my nickname. It's not just me getting on the air and talking for an hour or two about issues and getting fiery about it or getting emotional about it because I care about my city. But in truth, it is for me being nothing more than a foundation and a platform for you to be free. We could argue all day long about slavery, chattel slavery, indentured servitude, problems. But where can we find the common ground? Where can we get to work together? That's what I'm dedicated to. I'm dedicated to you. And it's tough talking about these things. It's tough admitting things like this, that surveillance for poor communities just means increased police presence, which means more people in jail. It's tough. But we got to talk about this. If we're going to have change, it needs to be progress. And we really need to start looking at how we're going to reshape our humanity, not for our benefit, not for my benefit, but for your children and your grandchildren. Y'all know what it is. Marie Mott with the Marie Mott Show. Y'all know tomorrow is the Gridiron Gang Show where we're going to have Keon Rose, Nick LaFew, and Sam talking all about football. They're going to be at the North Shore Starbucks starting at 7. It's lots of parking. Come have a cup of coffee, chat it up with them, talk about football, and see what's going on, even in sports in the city of Chattanooga. I love you guys. Guess what? It's absolutely nothing that you can do about it. Go forth, do something great for your community, and make this day the absolute best that you can. Be encouraged.
3, 2, 1.
Chattanooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4. 92.7 FM's news now.
For the first time ever, Tennessee reached a tourism milestone. Visitors to Tennessee spent over $20 billion last year. Governor Haslam announced the record numbers, saying as part of the record-breaking year, nearly $2 billion in local and state sales tax were collected, something Tennessee relies heavily